Greetings. Welcome to W2U5 Gagne's Events of Instruction Part 2. In the previous unit, we understood 4 of Gagne's 9 events of instruction. These 4 events were gain attention, describe the goal, stimulate recall of prior knowledge, present the material to be learned. In this unit, we will understand the remaining 5 of Gagne's 9 events of instruction, that is, provide guidance for learning, elicit performance practice, provide informative feedback, assess performance, enhance retention and transfer. These are the remaining 5 of the 9 events of instruction, and we will understand these events. Event 5, provide guidance for learning. Presentation of content is different from guidance for learning. This event allows the instructor to help the students learn the material presented. In some sense, help the students learn how to learn. So, guidance supports deeper understanding and long-term memory storage. So, guidance for learning is different from presentation of the content. Guidance should be provided to help learners encode information for long-term storage. This is also generally called as semantic encoding. Some methods for providing guidance for learning. Note that these are not the only methods, some of the suggested ones. Use mnemonics, analogies, visual images, metaphors and so on. Use examples as well as non-examples, that is positive instances as well as negative instances. This discrimination will help the learners understand the topic presented in greater depth. So, examples as well as non-examples. Help the learners use strategies like concept maps, note making. Then one can use scaffolding, where the instructor provides a well supported problem solving activity where the instructor's help is gradually eliminated or withdrawn. So, scaffolding, instructor can use case studies. In fact, many of these are generally called as instructional components. We will discuss these instructional components including concept maps, note making, etc. in the next week. Example, Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. Use analogies. Flipping pages of a flip book too slowly, that will obviously show missed motion. Provide sampling simulations using software tools like Scilab, MATLAB. Provide practical applications like audio clips, medical imaging applications. So, these show the importance of the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem, the importance of sampling the signal at appropriate frequencies. Current topic, Bernoulli's principle. Guide the learner to note misconceptions, observe the misconceptions to watch. Emphasize limits of the principle. Example, it is not valid across shock waves or in turbulent viscous flows. You can create a concept map or help the learner prepare one for himself or herself, which shows where Bernoulli's equation fits in the broader context of fluid mechanics. Event 6 is Elicit performance practice. Here, the instructor allows the learners to apply whatever they have learned and this will reinforce their newly acquired knowledge and skills. Eliciting performance provides an opportunity for learners to confirm their correct understanding. We saw that even in the Merrill's principles of instruction, this is an extremely important principle. The learners must apply their newly acquired knowledge and skills for the understanding to become a deep learning experience. Ask learners to complete exercises, solve problems, or answer questions. Let the learners engage in group activities or simulations. The repetition further increases the likelihood of retention. Example, again let us look at Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. Let the student solve a short, focused, targeted problem, a very simple problem, but the basics should become clear to the learner. A signal contains frequencies up to 8 kilohertz. What is the minimum sampling rate required? Then we can have group activity. A group can sample a sine wave at 3 different sampling rates using simulation software and discuss the results. They can plot the results and explain them in the group. Another example, this time the topic being heat transfer modes. Again, let the students solve a short, focused, targeted problem. Calculate the heat loss through a 1 centimeter thick steel plate when one side is at 150 degrees centigrade and the other is at 10 degrees centigrade. A simple problem, but the learner is able to see the application of the new knowledge acquired. Let the students work in pairs to classify different heat transfer modes in the given cases. For example, microwave oven, what is the heat transfer mode? Baking, what is the heat transfer mode? Similar cases can be listed and the teams of students can work on these practical cases and discuss what is the heat transfer mode involved in those cases. Next event, event 7 is provide informative feedback. As learners practice new knowledge and skills, provide specific and immediate feedback of their performance. Feedback in itself is extremely important, and when it is immediate, it becomes much more effective and it should be specific. And the importance of feedback in enhancing the learning of the students is well understood by all the teachers and it appears in almost all the instructional models. Timely and constructive feedback facilitates learning and allows learners to identify gaps in understanding early. This understanding early is extremely important because before it is too late, the learners can correct themselves. It strengthens correct knowledge. That is why the constructive feedback must be timely. Use positive reinforcement and correct mistakes gently. Obviously, feedback will not be of any use. In fact, it will be counterproductive if it is used as a means of intimidating the learners. The instructor must play a supportive role, which means that the instructor must correct the mistakes, if any, gently, so that it helps the learners see their mistakes, bridge the gaps in their understanding and improve their learning. So, use positive reinforcement and correct mistakes gently. The importance of this event in reinforcing the learning is well known. As I mentioned, even without any theory also, all good teachers do this. Exercises in tutorials may be used to help learners in their comprehension and encoding. It is not desirable to use scores in such exercises as a part of formal assessment for grading purposes or for awarding the final marks or whatever it is. Basically, when the tests or the tutorial exercises are used for grading purposes, there is certain amount of psychological build-up which happens in the learners, which perhaps makes it difficult for them to actually gain from such an activity. So, of course, it is debatable whether it should be always like that or whether it can be the choice of the instructor. But in general, when it is used as a part of providing informative feedback, it is suggested that the exercise in tutorials kind of a thing not be used for grading purposes. Review student answers and explain reasoning for incorrect responses. And even for correct responses, if it helps learners understanding. That is, occasionally, if the instructor feels that the learner has provided a correct response but has not fully understood the topic, then it may be helpful for the instructor to provide an appropriate explanation to the students again. Encourage students to explain their reasoning during problem solving. This also helps deep learning. Additional guidance and answers provided at this stage are part of what is generally called as formative feedback. While assessment for grading purposes is summative feedback, here the guidance and answers provided at this stage of this event provide informative feedback is generally part of formative feedback. The actual way the feedback is provided depends upon the topic at hand and the instructor's perception of the students and the student's performance itself. The next event, event 8, is assess performance. Upon completing the instructional unit, the learner is required to undergo a final summative assessment. This is obviously necessary not only for grading purposes but also for the instructor to understand what is the extent to which the students have mastered the topic. Of course, it is not necessary that this final summative assessment happens immediately after completing the instructional unit. It may happen at a predefined points of time during the course, but there is certainly a final summative assessment regarding the content that is discussed in the particular instructional unit. That is, the content that is related to specified course outcome or competency. So, there is definitely a final summative assessment with respect to every course outcome or competency. The learner is not to be provided any coaching, hints or any other form of help during such an assessment, because its purpose is a summative assessment and that leads to the award of a grade. So, no coaching, no hints, no kind of help during such an assessment. The performance of the learner in such an assessment contributes to the award of a grade for the learner. So, it is very important not to provide any coaching or hints. This event of assess performance allows the instructor to determine the extent to which the learning outcomes stated upfront has been achieved by the learners. And this not only allows the learner to come up with a grade, but when the extent of the achievement of the learning outcome is calculated, the instructor also can use this as an input to adjust his or her instruction if required when the same topic is offered again to the learners. This will improve the quality of instruction in subsequent phases. So, essentially this is not only a final grade for the student, but is also a mechanism for the instructor to close the quality loop. Several methods of assessment are available to the instructors and include quizzes, assignments, project works, oral presentations and so on. These are discussed in courses on assessment as well as courses on outcome based education. It is essential that assessment is in are in line with the stated learning outcomes. That means there is an alignment between the outcome and assessment. This is extremely important. Technology can be leveraged to assess the performance effectively and efficiently. Today, it is possible to use a variety of technology tools to assess the performance effectively as well as efficiently. In a formal education program, assessment and computation of the attainment of learning outcomes is an integral part of the outcome based education framework and is discussed in detail in courses like, as I mentioned, TAIL, NET, OBEA, etc. The final event, the event 9, is enhance retention and transfer. Help learners retain more information by providing them opportunities to connect course concepts to potential real world applications. There is, after the course is over also, the learner must be able to use the new knowledge acquired, the skills acquired in real world applications which happen beyond the specific course. That is, transfer the knowledge and skills to new scenarios. So, help learners apply knowledge in new contexts. Some methods to enhance retention and transfer: ensure that the learners clearly sees the connections among the currently mastered knowledge and skills with those acquired earlier and with a preview of those to be acquired in the subsequent courses or subsequent sections in the present course. Basically, what we are trying to say is that the students should not see the current topic in isolation. It is part of a connection network. It is related to what the learner has learned earlier. It is also linked to what the learner is going to do in the subsequent units. That is, with both past skills and future skills, there is a linkage. So, this must be seen by the learner so that he will see this whole knowledge and skill as a part of a complete comprehensive set of knowledge and skills useful for real world applications. Continually incorporate questions from previous assessments tests in subsequent assessments to reinforce the learning. This is a continuation of the same idea, that is, the topic should not be seen in isolation. It is indeed related to the earlier knowledge and skills acquired by the student. So, once in a while having questions related to the prior knowledge and skills is useful in making the student aware of this connection, and this will reinforce the learning. Have the students summarize the learning using tools like concept maps. As I mentioned, we will discuss several tools like concept maps, mind maps in later units on instructional components. To promote deep learning, clearly articulate the learning outcomes, ensure that there is a strong alignment among outcomes, instruction and assessment. This is the central idea of OBE also. Another example of this, Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem once again. Discuss real world consequences of violating the sampling theorem. Example, distorted images, poor audio quality, etc. Recommend watching a demo of aliasing in video. Example, wagon wheel effect. Connect the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem to the future topics that the learner is going to encounter. Example, quantization, analog to digital conversion, digital filters, etc. Very briefly, no doubt, but the student is able to see that there is a continuity of the idea. The concepts are linked. So, connect the topic to the future topics. Another example is Bernoulli's principle. One can have a project, a student project, to analyze the fluid dynamics in a real world engineering system like a fuel injector. This will take certain group effort, but it is worth in promoting retention and transfer. Group discussions: form small groups of learners and ask them to study and prepare a report on applications of Bernoulli's principles in different domains. Example, these are all real world domains. So, hydraulics, aerodynamics, automobile systems, biomedical systems, several others are possible. Simulation assignment: use a simulation tool like MATLAB to visualize pressure versus velocity in varying pipe geometries. So, in summary, we can say Gagne's theory has 9 events of instruction. The first event is gain attention. The description and purpose is capture the interest and engage the learners. 2. Inform objectives. So, state goals, and the purpose is to set expectations in the minds of the learners. 3. Stimulate recall. So, what we do is activate prior knowledge, and the purpose is to build connections. Event 4 is present the content. The description is the actual delivery of the material, and the purpose is to teach new information. Event 5 is provide guidance, support understanding, deepen learning. Event 6, elicit performance. We let the learners practice, and the purpose is to reinforce the concepts. Event 7 is provide feedback, correct and support the learning of the students, and this will enhance the learning. So, purpose is improve learning. Event 8, assess performance. This is evaluate learning, and the purpose is to measure success, the extent to which the outcome has been attained by the students. Finally, event 9 is enhance retention and transfer. This is to apply the knowledge, and the purpose is ensure long term use. So, Gagne's 9 events of instruction provide a good framework for instruction design. It takes into consideration conditions for learning. The theory lists 9 events in order. However, instructor may adapt this framework based on the identified learning outcomes, background of the students, and resource constraints. So, the implementation details for each event, including the time allocated, resource committed, etc., can be fine tuned. Instructor may spend more time on some of the events and practically no time on some of the events. So, there is considerable amount of flexibility in how these 9 events are actually implemented in practice. So, instead of taking this as a rigidly specified framework, instructor should see the spirit of this theory and design the instruction based on appropriate instruction model, and see how these 9 events are to be implemented. So, instructor has considerable choice as well as considerable responsibility in implementing these 9 events of instruction. So, that completes our discussion of Gagne's 9 events of instruction and our general discussion of the theories of instruction designs. In the next week, we will understand several evidence based useful instructional components. So, we will meet again in the next unit with the instructional components. Thank you.